News Talk Online is a production of Paltalk.com, the largest multimedia interactive program on the internet with more than 4 million unique users on demand on iTunes and on YouTube and on Blip TV and on my blog, GaryBaumgarten.com, where you're encouraged to post your comments, whether you agree with yours truly or not, no retribution. And thanks to our good friends at CRN Digital Talk Radio, we're syndicated to an additional 12 million households. I am your host, Gary Baumgarten. I welcome you to the show, and I encourage you to go to the Paltalk News Network website, which resides at reportergary.com, reportergary.com. Check it early and often, just like voting in Chicago for stories that you may or may not see, hear, or read in the mainstream media. And if it were not for the State of the Union address, we would probably be, and we probably will tomorrow, focusing on Egypt, where there's a chance of an overthrow of the government there. It's amazing, and we have some just spectacular video on the website. I encourage you to go and check that, but not until the show ends. Jonathan Wolfman, my good friend who has been down and out with a bit of an illness, he's back with a vengeance, and I'll tell you something, everybody wants you back, and so by popular demand, Jonathan Wolfman, our correspondent in Washington, D.C. Welcome back to News Talk Online on the Paltalk News Network, and I just love to hear your take on the State of the Union.
Hi, Gary. Good evening. It's really terrific to be back, and thank you. I will tell you my immediate impression, and these are maybe going to be a little general, but my overall impression is that finally, in the past month, certainly in Tucson and punctuated last night, he has really been able to merge not simply being a great orator, but he's also now becoming the kind of great communicator that I've wanted him to be, and I think that many people have wanted him to be. Being a great orator is terrific, but that does not necessarily mean that you're a great communicator. And what I mean by that is, I think now he is connecting, and he's connecting at a terrific clip.
Well, one of the things he's connecting in is showing how far to the center that he can move. Now, you're a fairly progressive type individual. Do you feel comfortable with what he communicated so well to you last night?
Yeah, I do. I will tell you, what he made me feel is even more that we are far more secure, despite the unemployment rate, which clearly needs betterment. But we are so much more secure than we were in March of '09 when we hit those lows of lows, that rock bottoms. It just seems to me that without looking at the past too specifically, which I think would have been a mistake for him, what he really left the impression being is, why would anyone with any real sense credit the ideas of a party that allowed Wall Street to nearly bankrupt us? Why anyone would credit that, and I think that was one of the implications of his talk, why anyone would credit a party that allowed that to happen is simply beyond any reasonable understanding.
Yeah, now, but he didn't take it to the next logical step, Jonathan. He didn't talk about prosecuting the banksters who literally raped this nation and put us in the position that we are in today. What's the matter with him and his Justice Department? Well,
I think that he is setting us up for a lot of wonderful things. You know, when he talks about investing, he's talking about, as the New York Times put it this morning, not simply investing to throw money around. He's talking about reasonable investments in order to compete, in order to get more jobs. You know, in terms, let me just go back to the communication thing one more time. I would love to see him do something along the lines of a regular, even weekly, and I'll use this old expression, fireside chat, where
on the Paltalk News Network, on the Paltalk News Network, right?
You know, you're perfectly set up for that, and I would hope he would use you. But you see my point. Some regular version, his version, make it his own, of some kind of fireside chat would be fabulous. The fact is, you and I both know that when economies turn around from such a low point, we know historically that, unfortunately, employment is the last thing to move up, and it's wrenching and it's horrible that it is. But that's because employers are not going to rehire until they're really confident that the other economic indicators are not only coming into place, but are really solidly in place. And we live in a capitalist system, and that's understandable. That is how capitalism works, for better or worse. You're not get willy-nilly hiring just because it would make people feel better. Employers need to know that when they hire, the overwhelming likelihood is that the other indicators of a good economy aren't going to drop out from under, so that they just have to lay off again.
Sandra in the United Kingdom, welcome to News Talk Online on the Paltalk News Network.
Thank you very much, Gary, and hello, Jonathan. It's great to have you back again.
Oh, thanks so much.
Oh, it's a pleasure. I thought the speech was clever, and here's one part I thought was exceptionally clever. Between saying, become a teacher, your country needs you, and we increase spending on infrastructure, you know, the high-speed rail and etc., was this little bit that was slipped in. And he said, he tacked on to the end of become a teacher, children of undocumented workers need to be encouraged to be dealt with. And then he went on to talk about amnesty. Is this and talking about we need immigration, is this his entry by saying, you know, the DREAM Act, because that's what he was introducing, that's what he was referring to, is in fact something that he's saying we need to keep the best brains in the country, not export them. And then he expanded that to immigration in general. Is this his way of the amnesty bill coming out, and is this his clever introduction to it? Thank you.
I think that it's I think his was a very nuanced way of looking at that, as you're implying. If I may, let me say something about what he said about teachers. I retired from teaching after about 36 years teaching, and while he couldn't get to the detail, as Gary was suggesting before, a State of the Union address is about broad themes. A budget proposal is about something more detailed than that. But the fact is that it's not ever going to be enough to simply rename our teachers builders of the country or builders of the future or something like that. If you're really going to change American education, you have to find systematic ways of identifying at an early stage those young people, decade in, decade out, who really want to spend their days with children in positive, productive, intellectually engaging ways. You've got to find a way to identify those people early and to attract them. And I have to say, I know this may sound nutty to some people, but the only real way, given the competition for talent, the only real way to do that is to pay the top teachers really, really well. And I understand that that's going to fly in the face of all sorts of things. But if you don't pay teachers who are really top flight, who could easily go into private in salaries in the area beginning at $90,000 to $110,000, and this is just my sense of it, you're never going to get an ongoing level, an ongoing class of high-level performing teachers. There's no question that it's the teachers.
And we're gonna have to leave it at that, Jonathan, because we are smack dab out of time. But I want to ask Andy in the United Kingdom, Harry in North Carolina, Diane in Australia, Sam in Boston, and everybody else who wants to have their say to stick around. The aftermath follows in just a couple of minutes, and I'll be back at 5 o'clock New York time tomorrow for another snowy, I believe, edition. Another storm's heading my way of News Talk Online on the Paltalk News Network. Until then, peace out. Jonathan Wolfman, who contributes to the Paltalk News Network website on a regular basis at reportergary.com, and you can also find him at opensalon.com. Let's go to Diane in Australia. Diane, welcome to News Talk Online on the Paltalk News Network.
Thank you, Gary. My statement is this, and I'll make it very brief. In the Australian news that was reported here, I would like your comments in regards to the budget cuts and also the wish list. Obama stated as follows: in 2035, 80% of US electricity to come from clean sources, wind, solar, nuclear, natural gas, and US to be the first country to have 1 million electric cars by 2005. Also stated, connecting America to the digital age. He proposes a construction of a high-speed railway network that can be accessed by 80% of Americans within 25 years. He also proposes a freeze on annual domestic spending for the next 5 years, an end to loopholes and tax breaks, and overall simplification of the tax code. But also my question is regarding the budget cuts. He also plans to privatise, I believe, Medicare. Sorry, I just lost the part here.
Well, let's give Jonathan a chance to kind of in a macro way respond to all that. Thanks for the call, Diane.
I did not hear him call for the privatization of programs such as Medicare. You know, that's what Mr. McCain had, and his party platform had been doing throughout 2007 and throughout 2008 in the run-up to the last presidential election. Imagine, if you would, please, what would have happened to Medicare if it had been privatized. It would have been wiped out. If it had been tied to the stock market by March of 2009, Medicare would not have existed, and I don't think that's a stretch. The one thing about all this, Jonathan, this is just like an outline of what he would like to see. This isn't an actual legislative package, and everything gets introduced first in the House, and the Republicans control the House, so it's all fairly meaningless unless the American people get behind everything that he says and convinces these Republicans, especially these Tea Party Republicans, to go along with his agenda. But at least he is outlining a vision. I mean, it's still not a monarchy or a dictatorship, although we kind of keep moving in that direction here in the United States. So the president cannot just decree that we're going to build this high-speed rail, as much as I agree with him that it's something that needs to be done.